Alright guys, welcome to your 11th tutorial, and now that we created all of the kind of the hard work, the dirty functions, all we need to do now is pretty much just call them all. So let me just go ahead and create a function, and I'm just going to call this main, and it's not even going to take any parameters. The main job of this is pretty much to call every other function that we created. So again, like I said, what this is going to do is it's going to open up a file and it's going to loop through every line of the file, and every line is basically a company. Now for each of these companies, it's going to download the data and store it into a database. So let me go ahead, and the very first thing we need to do is we need to open up this main ticker master.txt. So in order to do that, remember, just go ahead and create a variable. I'm just going to name mine main ticker file and set this equal to f open, because that is the function that opens files, allows you to work with files. Now the name of the file is freaking phlegm in my throat, ticker master dot text. It's a text file. It's going to be stored in the same directory as this stock downloader.php. Now the permissions is read. We only want to read the stuff from the file, nothing else. So now what we need to do is, just like we did in this file to database, we're going to read each of these lines one by one, because each line is a different company. Each company deserves its own little work. So remember how to do this. We put while end of file, and this is FEOF, and as a parameter you just write what is the file that you're working with, the file object, main ticker file. So this is basically going to search, this is basically going to loop through until you get to the end of this main ticker file right here. And what do we want to do? Well, just like before, we want to get each one of these line by line by line, and we want to save it as a string. So we just want to put company ticker, and remember this is going to be either Yahoo or Google or something like that. And how do we get a string of text? Does anyone remember? F gets. Now for F gets, just go ahead and put main ticker file. And why do we need to put this right here? Because this is going to move the pointer in this file object. So that's why we need to do that. So now the company ticker is going to be equal to Yahoo the first time it loops through, Google the second time, then Netflix, and it's going to keep looping through and eventually end with Adobe. However, I just want to add one little check before I continue. Sometimes whenever you're inserting, you accidentally hit space at the end, or maybe even at the beginning. Whenever you get a line, I just want to make sure that it trims any white space away. So let me just go ahead and do that real quick. And you do that, trim, just takes the string as a parameter. And this is, you shouldn't need to call this, but just in case someone makes a mistake whenever they're inserting company, it's a nice check to have. So now what I need to do is, remember, in order to download the data, you first need to create that URL, and we did that using the create URL function. So let's go ahead and copy this. In the next line, for each company, what we want to do is we want to create the URL from where our script is going to download the data from. And let's just go ahead and save this in a variable called file URL and set this equal to create URL for the company ticker. So let me just go ahead and copy this real quick. So what this is going to do is, at first it's going to create a URL, and remember this was the URL that we can download data from. It's going to create one for Yahoo, and then it's going to create one for Google and Netflix and so on and so forth. So all we did in this line is we're just getting a string, a URL. So now this file URL is equal to some file, some URL, just a string of text. So now what we want to do is we want to download and save the file from this URL right here. So the first thing we need is a location to where we can save it as. Now, I didn't show you guys this, but this is a real easy thing. You don't need to see me do this. What I did is I already created a folder on my server called text files. Now, I'm going to go ahead and put company. Do I want to write it like that? Yeah, I think so. Company text file, and I'm gonna set this equal to the directory. And what this is I'm basically gonna set this equal to a file name. Now, each of these file names have to be unique because whenever I save this data as a text file, it needs to save it somewhere, so that's what I'm creating right now. So where do I want to save each of these companies' text files? Well, like I said, I already created a folder on my server called text files. You'll see later on whenever I upload them. And remember, whenever you're working with files, you need to hit slash. And here's another thing. I'm going to name each of these files yahoo.txt, goog.txt, enflix.txt, and there's a space right at the end of there, enflix.txt. So in order to do that, whenever you're writing the file name, you just don't write it like this because that's going to name everything Yahoo. Just go ahead and append a variable, which is the company's ticker, and you'll see what's going on in just about 5 seconds. And then what you want to do right after this is just append the ending text. Now what this is going to do is basically going to loop through each of these lines of text, and it's going to save each of those files as that name, yahoo.txt, google.txt, and that's what we're going to be doing. So right here we created the URL of where we can download the data from, and right here we're saying, okay, this is what we want to save the file as. We want to save it as whatever name it was, .text, and we want to save it in a file called text files. Easy enough. So now what we need to do is we actually need to download and save those files because, like I said, we just created a bunch of strings right here. We didn't do anything. Now remember, in order to download and save the files, we created, ooh, I kind of stuttered there. We created a function called getCSV files, and what it does is basically you pass it in a URL and it downloads, you know, pretty much whatever is at that URL. So just go ahead and hit get CSV file, and instead of these parameters, the first one is the URL. Where is the location of the file that you want to download? Well, it's at that file URL. And now this output file is basically asking, okay, now that we have this, where do you want to save it? Basically, what do you want to name your file? What do you want to save your file as? We want to save it as whatever this thing was right here, yahoo.txt, google.txt, so on and so forth. So now what we did pretty much is we have this file and it is saved on our server as a text file. We can't work with a text file, so now what we need to do is we need to convert that text file to a database. Oh, what do we have right here? A nice function that converts text files to databases. How freaking convenient. Who would have known to build that? So now let's just go ahead and do that. And the first parameter is, what is the text file that you're going to be using? Well, the text file is company text file, right like that. And remember, this is populated with information now. It's populated with data now thanks to getCSV file. And the second parameter is the name of the table. Basically, what is the name of the table that you're going to insert? What's the name of the table that you want to insert this data into? And remember, I just named it the exact same thing as my company ticker. So that's the cool things. I have a file, like I'm going to have a file named yhoo.txt, and my table name is named yhoo. And I have a file named goog.txt, and my table is named goog. They all reference the ticker, so it's really easy whenever you're inserting stuff into your database or looking through it on your server or anything like that. So now, check it out. You may think we're done, but we're not. I'm just kidding. We only have one line of code to go. We have 4 functions right here. Create URL, get CSV file, file to database, and main. So now all we need to do is call main. So just go ahead and write main and check it out. So it's basically gonna say include this. These are my functions, and now I'm calling main, and whenever it calls main, it's going to kick off and call all these other functions. So now what I want to do is upload this to my server, test it out, and I'm sure I have plenty of bugs, and you guys are going to stick with me until I, debug this thing. So sorry you got to watch that, but hey, it's part of programming. So thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.